Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Villains on the Rebirth server. We are with Nightmare Lass, our level 45 Mastermind, who has almost 20 million experience points earned and 3 million to go to get to level 46. We are now speaking with a new contact named Terrence Dobbs. I also tried to speak to a contact, if he's up here, somebody from here. I can't remember his name now. I haven't done missions for, but he wouldn't talk to me. He did give me a new contact. Um, he gave me Vernon. So we'll do Terrence and then we'll do Vernon. What Terrence is they call me Dobbs, because that's my name. I'm a professional exterminator. Yeah, I know it doesn't sound too glamorous, but I provide a vital service in Granville. I guess you could call me a big game hunter amongst exterminators, because I hunt the nastiest pests around, arachnoids. You heard of them? You might have seen them around Granville, crawling around occasionally, nabbing unsuspecting citizens. There's a whole mess of them here in the gutter, and that's why I made this place my regular stomping grounds. These arachnoids, been called men, mutants, monsters, whatever. I calls them what I see them, and I calls them pests. I'm looking for a few hardy souls to help us out. All right, well, I guess that means we're going to be killing a lot of arachnoids. That's all right. So you think I'd have the local pest control market all locked up, right? But there's a new guy named Charlie Biggs who has come to town and set up a rival extermination business. Now, I normally don't mind a bit of competition, but this guy is undercutting my prices by a huge margin, and that I won't stand. Head over there and persuade him to take his business elsewhere. So I guess we're not going to fight arachnoids. We're going to fight the rival of this guy. So, welcome to the first episode of Season 5, the final season of this character. We will take this character from level 45 to level 50. We won't be doing any level 50 gameplay, really, other than maybe a mission or two, because 50 is the end of character development on this server. You can't get veteran levels, and the only way to get incarnate abilities is to do the incarnate trials, which I'm certainly not going to do on screen, and I'll probably never do at all. So that once we hit 50, that is going to be the end. If we're on a story arc, we will finish that story arc, but otherwise, that will be the end of this character. But my estimate is there are probably some 20 or so episodes to go, so it won't end right away. And as we go, we're going to have fun with all of our superpowers and our minions and kill a lot of things. In this case, rival exterminators. So I want to wish happy holidays to everyone, whatever holiday you may celebrate at this time of year. I'm posting this probably the day or two after Christmas. I'm not sure exactly when it'll go up. It's actually Christmas Eve morning as I film this. And as we go, I'd like to talk about this type of game. This is a role-playing game. It's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG as it is called, or sometimes just shortened to MMOs, which is massively multiplayer online. And no noun, just adjectives and adverbs. Oh, so we are going to kill some arachnoids. There we go. But this is a role-playing game, and of course it owes its lineage to all the tabletop role-playing games that came before it, such as Champions and Dungeons & Dragons and Rollmaster. And what I want to talk today about a little bit is sort of the difference between a role-playing game and, let's say, something like a novel or a movie. Why do I bring this up? Well, there have been a lot of... There's a lot of nonsense on the internet about what role-playing games should be like. And there are two related issues that have come up on the forum that I read, but they don't just come up there. I've heard about them in various YouTube streams. For the one guy that I listen to, he talks about it a lot because it comes up a lot. It comes up on Twitter. It comes up on the role-playing game YouTube TV shows. There are more than one. This comes up a lot. So the first issue is the one DM said, my players practically don't want to do any adventuring. They're basically being complete cowards because they don't want their characters to die. And he said, did I screw this up? We're at level +0. I'm going to have to raise this. We'll do it after this mission. I always forget to do that. And I notice it when I see white cons, because I shouldn't be seeing white cons. Anyway, he said they're afraid to do anything because they're afraid to die. And what do I do? They don't want their characters to die. And then in a related story, a related post that it's a totally different DM, probably doesn't realize it's related, he said, how do I avoid railroading my players? And I think these are actually connected, these ideas. There are a lot of people who don't want railroads. They complain about railroads. We'll talk about what a railroad is. This is probably, people would consider kind of a railroad, right? I mean, City of Heroes, you start a story arc for a contact. Like, once you're on the story arc, we're not on one yet, but once you're on a story arc and you see the little book, you can't get off it. There's no way to drop a story arc. There never has been. You can drop missions, but not story arcs. And once you're on a story arc, you have to see it through to the end, and it has defined parts, and it has story parts, and you have to go through each part, and there are no options. There are no choices. That's a railroad. And the question is there anything wrong with that? Well, I would argue not really. If I thought there was something wrong with it, I wouldn't be playing the game. But the word railroad has become, for lack of a better term, a four-letter word in modern role-playing games. And if you're what am I missing here? If you're a DM who is railroading your players, people think you're a bad DM, right? And so this DM is saying, how do I avoid railroading? Well, why is it considered bad? And then, why is it that players these days are so afraid their characters are going to die when, of course, back in the old days, characters died all the time and it was not considered that big of a deal. I mean, you didn't want your character to die, but you knew it could happen, and you always had backup characters in the wings that you would be perfectly happy to play if your original character passed away. So, why do I think these two are related? I think they're related because of something somebody said in one of the threads. Talking about railroading, and one of the players came in and talked about old school modules, and I don't understand this whole thing about railroading, and what are you guys really even talking about? And so somebody said, oh, we got a boss here. See, he was orange and I thought he was a lieutenant. This should be fine, he's only orange. So anyway, this player said, in the old days, the DM just gave you a dungeon and you crawled through it, killing everything and getting its treasure, and that was it, and we called that an adventure. And he said these days players want something more sophisticated. They want a story with, they want character arcs. They want a story, he said, like the kind you see in a novel or a movie. And I read this and I thought, but you're not in a novel or a movie. This isn't a novel. It's not a movie. This is a role-playing game. And the medium of a novel is fundamentally different from the medium of a role-playing game, just like the medium of an online MMO is fundamentally different from a pencil and paper game. You could not have the number of encounters in a dungeon in D&D that you have in these City of Heroes missions, because the battles take forever, right? A battle like this, played with dice on paper, between 6 sidekick NPCs, my main character, and 2 or 3 villains, would take an hour to resolve. And to go through a mission like this that has 20 or 30 spawns would take 5 or 6 sessions, and all you did was go through a small dungeon. It can't work that way. It has to be different, because the medium is different. Everything goes faster when the computer is calculating it, and everything goes slower when human beings are calculating it. So you kind of can't do it exactly the same way. By the way, they don't have character death in this game. Why? Because things happen so fast. I've discussed this in one of my Stalker videos, that things happen so quickly in a video game that you can die. You have to react really fast, and if you just misclick a button, your character can die. So they don't make the death permanent, because can you imagine misclicking a button and a character you got to 45th level dies, and you can't play it anymore, and you have to go make up a new character? Well, that's ridiculous. Nobody would play the game. Nobody's going to invest that kind of time when they find out that after 90 hours of play or whatever we've done here, their character is permanently dead. And that looks like Charlie. We'll go ahead and give our guys a couple buffs. I'm not going to bother with Hell on Earth. We'll do these two. And I'll make sure I don't get mezzed. Because there are 2 bosses here. Yeah, I guess if there are 2 bosses, we should do Hell on Earth as well. And then we will send the minions after the weak guy first and kill him off, and then we'll do the strong guy. The strong guys. And I will weaken their defenses, and we'll just do one at a time. I'm not sure which of these 2 is weaker, so we'll just fight them in whatever order, it doesn't matter. Oh. Nice tab not working. Heal up Mo. And that's what we want as a hold. Very good. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to remember this is not a movie. This is not a novel. And you shouldn't expect... What are you doing here, Larry? Are you mezzed? Let me unmezz you. You shouldn't expect the game to play like you're in a novel. It's not the same thing at all. And you know, I don't know why players have this idea that it should be like a novel, but it's not. Now, how does this relate? How do these 2 things relate? Well, in a novel, characters have plot armor, right? They only die when it serves the story of the novel for them to die, and at no other time. Gandalf seems to die anyway, on a bridge, holding up a glowing sword and saying, "You shall not pass," to a demon that's 20 feet tall and has fire whips, right? Boromir dies only after he has come through the other side of a temptation and been redeemed, and after he has sort of awakened to the fact that he was wrong. Then he goes and saves 2 hobbits from 100 orcs and dies in this heroic and tragic way once his character arc has finished. Right? Nobody dies in a novel just at random, and unless it's a badly written novel. And yet you can die at random in a role-playing game, and you're supposed to be able to die at random in a role-playing game. That's the way it works. It's part of the game, and so it's structurally, it's functionally very different. So these 2 related ideas, that players don't like quote-unquote railroads, and that players don't want their characters to die, these are connected to the same thing. Players think that playing a role-playing game is them being in a movie or a novel rather than them playing a board game or a tabletop game, right? And it isn't a movie. It isn't a novel. And I think that's caused all kinds of trouble for a lot of gaming tables. And I think that the D&D and other role-playing game shows that are out there where they run the show like it's a movie, make it worse, because people see that and think, oh, D&D is like a movie. It's like a TV show. It should be structured the way a TV show is. It's not. It's not supposed to be. And, I mean, you can try to structure it that way, but I think it's going to be very hard to pull off, because movies have writers and role-playing games don't. They have players. Yes, a role-playing game is cooperative storytelling, but it's not cooperative novel writing. And there are random events, and anything can happen, and the unexpected can and should and does always happen. And that's supposed to be the fun of it. That's not what occurs when you're writing a novel. Things may happen in a novel that the reader didn't expect, but things that happen in a novel are almost never what the writer didn't expect. And so, and even if they come that way as the writer's writing, there are revisions and drafts, and they make sure that every scene is important to the plot, which cannot happen around the table at D&D. And often the plot of a novel is an externalization of the inner conflicts of the characters. Again, that can't really happen in a game of D&D. You cannot get out of D&D what you get from a novel or a movie. It's not entertainment. It's a game. It's a totally different form of a pastime. And I just feel like a lot of players don't seem to understand that. And I think it's the same thing behind both I don't want my character to die and I don't want to be in a railroad. And it sounds contradictory, right? If you don't want to be in a railroad, that means you don't want things predetermined, but you're saying I want to predetermine that my character never dies. That's the ultimate railroad, right? My character, no matter what happens, is never going to die, is a railroad. But people think of the railroad only as, oh, I have to go on the adventure the DM wants me to go on. And that's not a railroad. That's just an adventure. but because it's not like a movie, people think it's wrong. And so I think that the D&D published adventures and some of these other game published adventures are also bad because they make the player, they are written like novels. They are actually railroads. They're written like novels, and they make the players and the DMs think that this is how D&D should be structured when it's really not how a good role-playing game is structured. A good role-playing game is actually structured like City of Heroes. Here is a little seed, a storytelling seed. This guy wants to outcompete all the other exterminators, and he's going to send you up against his competition. And then you go out and do it, and you go through the mission however you see fit. You can call in group mates, you can summon your pets, you can not summon your pets, you do whatever you want in the mission, and then you come back and you get the next step of the story. That's the way role-playing games are supposed to be structured. And people object because it's not how movies are structured. But again, we're not in a movie. We're playing a role-playing game. All right, let's see the next step of this role-playing game storyline. He says, okay, I've got another job. There's another nest of them arachnoids in, surprise, surprise, some caves underneath Granville. Some Arachnos troops went in to call them back a bit, but they got wiped out to the man. Something about the ambush, about how they were set up, whatever. Arachnoids may be fast and strong, but they aren't smart enough to take down trained Arachnos troops. Something else is going on. Let's see what it is. Oh, okay. So we are going to do that, but before we do that, I want to set the mission difficulty. So I will be right back as soon as I go to Sharkhead and change the mission difficulty setting. Alright, we are back. Heading into this cave. Yeah, I one of the things, we go back to like railroading, right? A classic way to do a D&D module is your adventure is in a town, and you hear about for some reason you hear about a dungeon outside of the town, a dungeon area. Now, a dungeon in D&D can be a network of caves, it can be a crypt or a temple, it can be a ruined castle, whatever. There's a hill over yonder, and there's a ruined castle with some chambers underneath, and some undead are coming out and haunting the countryside. That's the plot, and the expectation is you're going to go into the ruins and find out, who's making the undead come out and try to stop them, right? But you could decide you want to join them, right? I mean, there's the plot is just, here's a place to go and a reason to go there. And these days, that is considered a railroad. Why? Because the players would say, but now we have to go to that place, right? And by making us go to this place, maybe we don't want to go to that place. They talk about it and they decide, we want to go to the other side of the nation and see what's over there because we're not interested in this hill and the undead. But it's not a railroad. It's actually a sandbox to say, okay, I'm going to make a map of the area. I'm going to give you a reason to go onto the map. And then once you're on the map, you do what you want, right? You don't actually have to kill everybody. You could find a necromancer and negotiate with him. You could offer to work for him and help him bring him slaves from the town. Whatever you want. But whatever you do is going to be done in this dungeon that I built, right? And that's not a railroad. Right, as I said in my post, that is a concession to reality, to the reality that the dungeon master is a human being with a life, with other things to do besides build dungeons, and he is not capable, realistically, of building hundreds of maps for the entire world just because on a whim you guys might want to go investigate some place over yonder that he didn't know you wanted to investigate. Right? He cannot build a dungeon for every hex on the map just in case you might want to go to that hex. What he can do is build a single dungeon that's really well done and give you a reason to go explore it. And again, a dungeon in D&D is just an adventure area, right? Like this. This is a dungeon. This is an adventure area. And we're going through and we're defeating all arachnoids. That's our mission, right? Now, the computer can randomly generate as many of these as it wants, and there's a whole staff of people. There was a whole staff of people working at City of Heroes to create these maps. But in a group of D&D players or champions, players with a scenario, right, that which is the adventure name in champions, where the GM says, okay, like, you guys are in your base and you hear alarms and there's a robbery downtown. It's not a railroad for the players to take their characters and go down there and stop the robbery. That's the adventure that the GM created. You say, well, we don't want to do that one. Can't you come up with another one? Well, he could, but you're going to need to give him another week. Or she could, right? You're going to need to give the GM another week. You can't expect the GM to create 30 or 40 scenarios on the off chance that the original one they present to you isn't the one you wanted. So the concession to reality is we can only fight one battle at a time. We can only go on one scenario or one adventure at a time. We can only go on one mission at a time, right? So if that's true, then you may as well go on the mission the DM had time to create, rather than saying, but I don't want to go on that one, let me go on a different one. Find a reason why your character would want to go on that adventure and go on it. Concede to reality, the reality that the DM doesn't have time to make up multiple adventures. With my players right now, I'm facing this. I don't know where they're going to go. And I actually told them, you guys need to tell me where you're going. Now, we're now nearly toward the end of the first of the 2 weeks in between sessions, and they haven't told me anything. So I don't know where they're planning to go, right? And the problem is that then I have to try to predict where they're going to want to go and start inventing areas and encounters. So, like, for a great example, I don't know whether they're going to go by land or by sea. Why does that matter? Well, I have an adventure trigger. The one character has a girlfriend who he said left by sea. And he doesn't know what happened to her and he wants to find her. And I thought, well, okay, what's cool that could have happened to her? I thought, all right, well, her ship was waylaid by pirates. They captured them and she became one of the pirates. So there's a trigger. When they go out to sea on a merchant ship, I've already designed a merchant ship. It's a railroad, right? There's one ship that I designed with a crew. If they decide to go looking for a ship, that's the one that's going to take them. Because I don't have time to make up 17 different merchant ships at the port and 17 different NPC crews with 17 different captains that have personality traits that are different from each other, knowing that whatever 17 I create, the players are only ever going to contract one ship. So there's no point in making up any of the other ships, right? So in a sense, yes, oops, I'm getting ambushed here. Yes, it is a railroad because, like, it would be impossible for me to make up an entire fleet of merchant ships. It would take me hours and hours to make up a map of every single different ship and a whole crew for every single different ship, and all of this knowing that at the most they will only ever be able to board and ride one of the ships. I don't have time for that. So I made up one ship. It's called the Kingfish. It has a crew. A male first mate, a male captain, a female first mate. I know exactly what their personalities are, and if the characters go looking for a merchant ship, that is the one they will take. Right? Most of the other merchants will be like, we're not going in that direction, we're not heading there, we're going to Africa, we're going here, we're going there. And whatever place they say they want to go, this captain will be like, yeah, we're heading there. And so that's the first sort of quote-unquote railroad. The second, if you want to call it railroad, is there's a trigger. When they go to sea in this merchant ship, they are going to be waylaid by the Labyrinth, which is a massive quinquireme of 5-row, like a trireme has 3 rows of oars. This thing has 5 rows of oars, 300 sailors or rowers, and then another 100 or so other men. So it's like 400 men. It's a huge, like 150-foot long galley. Are we missing somebody? Are we missing Curly? Where's Curly? You gotta be kidding me. Alright, Curly. I'm gonna dismiss and resummon you. This is just ridiculous. Even in an open cave like this, he can't find his way. So, this pirate ship, the Labyrinth, is gonna show up. And the girlfriend is the first mate on the ship. She's the what they call the quartermaster back then on a pirate ship, and or actually on a galley. And she this is a red boss. Let's go ahead and give buffs. She's actually captaining the ship because the real captain is back at their pirate base uh, in their port, and so I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to try to use magic to try and fight the pirates or not. I think that they're probably going to be captured, and the captain of the merchant ship is going to beg them not to do any violence because this ship is infamous, the Labyrinth, and he's afraid they're going to like get everybody killed. But I don't know if the players are going to listen to that or not. And if they sink the Labyrinth, they're going to lose a chance to meet this guy's girlfriend. So I don't know what they're going to do about that, right? But the plan, and I guess I should have taken out all these minions, but we're all right. The plan is the Labyrinth is going to capture them. And when they're captured, they're going to take everybody aboard the Labyrinth. They're going to leave some of their sailors on board the Kingfish to take it. And what I thought was, okay, well, why haven't the Romans been able to stop this guy? And I was going to put him on an island in the Mediterranean, what I call the Sundered Sea in my world. And I decided that the Romans would find them if they were on an island in the Sundered Sea. So where is their hiding place? Well, I decided their hiding place is in the astral plane. That these guys actually have figured out there's a maelstrom. I got this from Matt Colville. There's this giant maelstrom in the middle of the Sundered Sea that the Romans and everybody else is afraid to go into. And these guys were fleeing the Romans. And they fled into the maelstrom because it was the only place to go. And they came out in the astral plane, and now they've sort of figured out how to navigate it. And so if they get captured by these pirates, they're going to end up in the astral plane, and they're going to have to get back home. And I have a whole quest designed for them. The pirate captain doesn't like adventurers and wants to kill them. He doesn't want to keep them. And the girlfriend is going to convince him, well, you could send them on a quest. And his quest is, find me the pearl. I got this idea from a crate dragon pearl. So you get ideas from everywhere. The pearl of a psionic astral dragon. And this is where they're going to encounter psionics for the first time in my world, which I'm using the Matt Colville psionics for. So find me an astral dragon of sufficient size. It has to be at least an adult. Are you guys coming? Will you come on? Find me an astral dragon. Kill it, take its pearl, give it to me. I can then he has this special navigation thing on his ship that he can't use because that would get him, like, allow him to teleport around the astral sea instead of having to sail it. And he can't use it because it has to be powered by a dragon pearl. He says, get me a dragon pearl and I'll let you go. And he's even going to give them a little ship if they... Well, he's going to give them a ship to go find the dragon, and if they do find the dragon and get the pearl, he'll let them keep the ship. And so that if they want to sail around the astral sea, they can. I don't know what they're going to want to do. Now, of course, while they're doing this, a whole bunch of crap's going to be going down. What do we got here? What am I missing? A whole bunch of stuff's going to be going down in the regular world, right? Time is passing. The big bad guy is going to be conquering Roman cities. I don't know how long they're going to stay. So I'm working on the maps for the ships, the Pirate Cove, the Astral Dragon Lair. That's one set of maps. But I don't know if they're going to go by sea. And they've also suggested they might go by land. The Roman roads are excellent, and so it's possible that they might decide to go by land to a different city. And so I've got to work on that. Right? Well, what are they going to do if they go there? I have no idea. And then the first city they were talking about going to was an elven city, which is a port city. And I was like, okay, I've got to find a way to figure out what do they want in this city. So this city has not been captured yet by the bad guys, so it's just a city. I thought, okay, they've got to be an adventure in each city. The way this plot works, there are 16 temples. There's a clue in each temple. They need to find every temple. And so it's sort of open in the sense that they can go to any temple in any order they want. But the danger, of course, is that they could try going somewhere that I'm not ready for. And I can't make up 16 temples and 16 challenges all at once. I don't even know what level they're going to be when they go into these temples. And I certainly don't think we want to go into them walking all the way across the world to a temple that I thought they were going to be 19th level when they went into, and they're 8th level, and either they all die or they realize we got to go back. And we wasted all this time traipsing halfway across the Roman Empire to Constantinople, and we're too low a level to do this temple. So what I'm trying to do is set the temples up to be about the challenge for the level of what they are in at the time when they go into the temple. And by the way, I've turned stealth off because I want to be seen by the bad guys, because I want to aggro them, because I don't know where the heck they are. This is what I hate about defeat all in a cave like this, because I don't know where everybody is. This is the entrance, so there isn't anybody here. And I'm basically trying to outline all the walls so I know I haven't missed any tunnels. So I said, okay, well, what am I going to do with the elves? So there's a temple. It's a temple of Diana. They have no right to go into a temple. Only the priests can go into temples. And they have a cleric, but he's a cleric of Apollo, so there's no reason for them to allow them into the temple. So I said, well, what I'll do is I'll make a quest, right? I will have the temple mistress. Oh, here we go. I'll have the temple mistress say, I'll let you into the temple even though you shouldn't go in if you do a quest for me. So what's the quest? So I came up with, I think I've mentioned this, that somebody stole the holy treasures, the votive offerings, the treasure of the temple. And one of the items is designed to tempt the sorcerer, and I mentioned that in a previous episode. So I was like, well, who took it? And as I was looking through ideas, I came up with I said maybe the fish people, the Kuo-toa, took it. And I came up with the hidden shrine. What is it? The shrine of the D2, the shrine of the Kuo-toa, which is an old school D&D module. It's got a great map. I can populate it with. It's actually going to be Sahuagin rather than Kuo-toa because I think they fit better. And now we're done with the mission. But I'm going to populate it and work on that. So I have that map to work on. I have ships to work on. I have the astral plane to work on. And then Lord knows where else they're going to go. I cannot do all of these, right? And so the idea is, look, when the temple mistress tells you, these fish people stole our treasure and we want you to get it back, yes, I know it's a little bit railroady for you to then have to go get it back. But as a human being who is a DM, I cannot spend all the time building this temple and have you guys never go into it and go somewhere I didn't build. It's not possible to have all of these areas completely specced out. I have made multiple cities now. I have made Rome. I have made Ostia, which is the port of Rome. Port Voltur, which is a made-up town. Port of the Vulture, which is the place one of the characters is from. Nemesis, Lugdunum, which is a ruined city. They've been in Nemesis and Lugdunum. I've made Port Voltur because it's close. But there are any number of other cities in the Roman Empire. If they decide to go to Port Draconis or Port Exera, which are two other ports on the other side of the empire from the place where the Grey Elves are, I don't have maps for those places. And I can't just generate them on Saturday afternoon when we're playing tonight. It takes me a couple weeks to build a city map. So this is what I mean about concede to reality. The reality that your game master can only build one set of maps and design one set of villains and design one mission at a time. And if you say, no, we're not going on that mission, give us something else, the GM is going to just throw up his hands and say, I can't GM for you guys. You're not going on the missions that I set up. So unless you want to play an idea that's openly, the Mythic engine, openly just randomly generated with the DM. By the way, that's what I would do with my players for next. Like if I had it to do over again, I'd say we're going to just randomly generate stuff. And if you don't want to do that, get another DM, because this, either that or we have to do something that's more on rails, because it is such a massive amount of work to try and build a sandbox where they can literally go anywhere, even places you didn't think they were going to try to go, and you have to come up with it. And you have to make maps, and you have to design enemies, and build encounter areas, and a story, right? Because they don't just want to do a dungeon crawl. They want a story with hooks into the characters, and with your character being the star of a novel. All by going to an area that I didn't know you were going to go. That is not possible for anybody to do. No one can do that. And I think players who have not been DMs don't realize this. And of course, the thing that frustrates me the most is the player asking for all the hooks. It's just one of them is like my best friend who has DM'd before. And he knows this, right? He realizes this. So, frankly, actually, I think I don't want to send a mail out on Christmas dates, Christmas Eve today. I'm going to actually send an email to my party and say, okay, guys, you told me, I asked you guys to let me know where you want to go next on Saturday. I haven't heard anything. I hope you've been talking amongst yourselves. You need to give me time, right? We have barely more than a week left before we play again. You can't just spring that you want to go, just spring that you want to go to Carthage on me when I don't have Carthage ready, right? I mean, there are all these places they might want to go to Carthage. Because this same character is looking for his girlfriend, is looking for his mother, and he's got clues that she might be in Ostia and she might be in Carthage. So he wants to maybe go to one of those places. And Carthage is also on their list of temples that they need to look at. But I don't have a quest ready for Carthage. Right? Now it's possible I could say, okay, well, we'll do the Kuo-toa story in Carthage. But actually Carthage is in Africa, and I was going to have them go on a desert adventure for that. Right, but I don't have a desert. I can't prepare a desert adventure and an underwater adventure, and a city adventure in Rome, and something else all at once, and an ocean adventure and the Astral Sea all at the same time. I'm one guy, right? I can only spend so many hours at the computer doing this, and as I tried to explain to the one guy, my first draft at stories often doesn't work well, and I have to take a second and a third and a fourth pass. That takes time. Right, I start building a map today. I go to bed. I wake up the next morning. I play City of Heroes. I go for a walk. While I'm on my walk, I think, "Ooh, I could do this instead." I come back, completely change the map. Tomorrow morning, I modify the map again, and by the time they see it, it's been through 3 or 4 or 5 different iterations, and that's why it's good. But if they tell me on Wednesday we want to go to the mountains on Friday and do this dungeon, and I don't even have a dungeon ready, it's just going to be my first draft, which means it's not going to be as good. So, yeah, again, if you're playing a tabletop game, just like, by the way, we concede to reality here, right? Nobody complains about this. Nobody calls this a railroad or objects to it, because we recognize it's a computer. It had to be pre-written by developers. They can't react to how every single character on the MMO plays, so you have to accept the missions that they give you. No one complains about that. And this is a team of developers with a computer procedurally generating stuff. And they could come up with procedural branching story arcs if they really had wanted to. They didn't, and nobody complains, but they could have. And even though we don't object to a whole team of developers producing something like this that seems like a railroad in a professionally produced game, we somehow expect our hobbyist DM or GM, who's doing this in his spare time for free out of the goodness of his heart, all by himself, is going to somehow have the ability to create stories with way more open-endedness and freedom than an entire team of developers could create in a professional setting at a 9-to-5 job. That's really unfair to the game master. And to me, you're asking for the game master to throw up their arms and say, I give up. Don't do that to your GMs, guys. When they put an adventure in front of you, be a good sport and go on the adventure. If they're putting adventures in front of you that you don't like, you don't say, I'm not going on the adventure. Go out of game, in between sessions and say, look, DM or GM, I'm fine on this adventure, but I really would like more political intrigue and social interaction than all this hack and slash. The GM can easily provide you with that next month when they've had time to prep it and this adventure is over. But to say I'm not going on the dungeon adventure that you prepared because I'd rather do a city adventure you didn't prepare is monumentally unfair to the DM, and it ignores the reality that a DM or a GM can only create one thing at a time. Have mercy on your GMs, guys, because there's a shortage of them. There are thousands of people who can't play D&D because there aren't any GMs to go around. And if you crap on the GMs who are doing the work, they're going to stop doing it, and there will be nobody to run games. So just be careful and accept reality, and don't ask to never have your character die and also be the star of your own novel, because it's not a novel and characters can die. All right, let's talk to him. He says, what? Arachnoids set in traps and ambushes? talking? Ah, geez. I don't like this one bit. And who is this Biff sending the notes to the arachnoids? So, we missed a little bit. So it all started when you did a job for Terrence Dobbs. We're now in a story arc, clearing out the arachnoid nest. The arachnoids were a lot more organized than normal, having taken previous Arachnos assault squad and ambushed. And deep in their lair, we found a battered note from someone called Biff, telling that it's weird that it wasn't a glowy, which is why I didn't even think about it, because all we were doing was defeating guys. Biff telling that there was a cure to hold out as long as they could. So the arachnoids are trying to be cured, it looks like. And that is what our next story arc will be, right? So we're on a story arc now about someone trying to cure the arachnoids, and either we're going to help them cure them or stop them from curing them, and I don't know what that is. Now that's railroady, right? And that should, if you're a DM, you should leave the players the choice of what to do, right? I've actually built into my campaign, I don't know if they're going to save the Roman Empire or not. The Roman Empire is being attacked by a bad guy who has every reason to hate the Empire because they slaughtered his people and killed him. He has a just reason for revenge. Now, he has gone off the deep end and become completely hateful and evil, and he's murdering innocent people, including Romans who had nothing to do with killing him, right? He wants to destroy all warm bloods. He's had it, and he wants to kill everybody and destroy Rome. These guys are Romans, or in the Roman Empire. 2 are Romans and 2 are not. Presumably they're going to want to save the Empire. But after they learn everything that happened, I have open-ended, they might decide that this guy, Magog the Slaughterer, who's killing the Roman Empire, is right, and that the Romans were wrong, and that the gods were wrong to imprison the Titans in Tartarus, and they might turn on the gods and turn on the Romans and side with Magog. If they do, I don't know what's going to happen, probably the end of the world, and they're going to be like the evil victors of the world, but it's possible that they could decide this guy is right and side with him, and we're not going to stop him. We're going to let him take out the Roman Empire or even help him. I've left open that possibility. They could do that if they want, right? And that's the sandbox part, but they still need to go on the adventures that I created as they're doing this, or I'm not going to be able to run the game, you see. So again, just give your DM a break and go on the adventure that they prepare. Be a good sport. And just like I'm going to be a good sport and go on the story arc that these guys prepared, right? Remember, we've worked for Mage Killer Zakara, right? Who wants to destroy magic, and yet I'm a magic character. I went on the adventure my GM prepared for me because I recognize that that's what's there. And as a good sport, you play the missions that are there. Now, there are some missions I don't want to do. Those are because I hate those missions, right? Like the First Ward, Praetoria. That's a different story. But you don't say I'm not going on this story arc because I don't, because my character, quote unquote, wouldn't, and then the DM is left with nothing. So you create a character who'd be willing, right? What did I do? I said, okay, well, I'll find a way. What do we do with Mage Zakara? Even though we don't have to roleplay because we're just soloing through a computer game. I said, well, we're going to take the books that she's had me collecting, and I'm going to go to my base, and I even did it with you guys, and I went up to the table, and I said, I'm going to copy the scrolls that she gave me. So my character has all of the magic that she's trying to destroy secretly written in her base. So Mage Killer Zakara didn't destroy any of those spells like she thinks she did because my character has them, right? I was able to go on the adventure and find a way to get my character to do it and fit in because that's the adventure my game master had prepared for me. That's what you should be doing at the table, and it's discourteous not to do that. All right, folks, that's enough of that rant. Didn't mean to talk that long about it. We've now got almost 2 beads into level 45 and heading for 46. And we've got another mission to do for this guy, which we will do in the next episode. Until then, folks, I am Scarpalock, and this has been City of Villains on the Rebirth server.